Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhaja Jana Vanchana Yashodanandana Bhaja Jana Vanchana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Vara Marava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhaja Jana Vanchana Yashodanandana Bhaja Jana Vanchana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhaja Jana Vanchana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Gurudev. Om Vishnupada Prabhupada Sata Sata Shishabad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Pavakacharya Asata Tara Sata Shishabad, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikhaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasari Gauda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Yamuna Maya Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Guru Pramanande Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Jai. Welcome to the Bhagavad Gita class. And we're in chapter 10, the opulence of the Absolute. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Arjuna uvāca. Paraṁ brahma paraṁ dhāma. Pavitraṁ paramaṁ bhavān. Puruṣaṁ śāśvataṁ divyam. ādi-devam ajaṁ vibhum. āhus tvām ṛṣayaḥ sarve. Devarṣir nāradas tathā. Asito devalo vyāsaḥ. svayaṁ caiva bravīṣi. So because there's two together, it's 12 and 13. Okay. Bhavān. Divyam. ādi-devam ajaṁ vibhum. Sarve. nāradas tathā. Asito devalo vyāsaḥ. svayaṁ caiva bravīṣi. Brahma. Arjuna uvāca. paraṁ dhāma. Word for word, Arjuna uvāca. Arjuna said, Paraṁ, supreme, brahma, truth, paraṁ, supreme, dhāma, sustenance, pavitraṁ, pure, paramaṁ, supreme, bhavān, you, puruṣaṁ, personality, śāśvataṁ, eternal, divyam, transcendental, ādi-devam, the original Lord, ajaṁ, unborn, vibhum, greatest, āhus, say, tvām, of you, ṛṣayaḥ, sages, sarve, all, deva-ṛṣiḥ, the sage among the demigods, nāradas, tathā, also, asito, devalo, vyāsaḥ, svayaṁ, personally, also, eva, certainly, bravīṣi, you are explaining, unto me. Translation and purports by His very divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Arjuna said, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, the greatest. All the great sages, such as Nāradas, asito, devalo, and vyāsaḥ, confirm this truth about you. And now you yourself are declaring it to me. Please repeat. Arjuna said, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, the greatest. All the great sages, such as Nāradas, asito, devalo, and vyāsaḥ, confirm this truth about you. And now you yourself are declaring it to me. Purport. In these two verses, the Supreme Lord gives a chance to the Mayavadi philosopher, for here it is clear that the Supreme is different from the individual soul. Arjuna, after hearing the essential 4 verses of Bhagavad Gita in this chapter, and the essential 4 verses are 8 through 11, that's the Chatushloki verses. Arjuna, after hearing the essential 4 verses of Bhagavad Gita in this chapter, became completely free from all doubts and accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He at once boldly declares, you are paraṁ, Brahma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And previously, Krishna stated that he is the originator of everything and everyone. Every demigod and every human being is dependent on him. Men and demigods, out of ignorance, think that they are absolute and independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That ignorance is removed perfectly by the discharge of devotional service. This has already been explained in the previous verse by the Lord. Now, by His grace, Arjuna is accepting Him as the supreme truth, in concordance with the Vedic injunction. It is not that because Krishna is Arjuna's intimate friend, Arjuna is flattering him by calling him the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth. Whatever Arjuna says in these two verses is confirmed by Vedic truth. Vedic injunctions affirm that only one who takes to devotional service to the Supreme Lord can understand Him, whereas others cannot. Each and every word of this verse spoken by Arjuna is confirmed by Vedic injunction. In the Kena Upanishad, it is stated that the Supreme Brahman is the rest for everything. And Krishna has already explained that everything is resting on Him. The Mundaka Upanishad confirms that the Supreme Lord, in whom everything is resting, can be realized only by those who engage constantly in thinking of Him. This constant thinking of Krishna is smaranam, one of the methods of devotional service. It is only by devotional service to Krishna that one can understand His position and get rid of this material body. In the Vedas, the Supreme Lord is accepted as the purest of the pure. One who understands that Krishna is the purest of the pure can become purified from all sinful activities. One cannot be disinfected from sinful activities unless he surrenders unto the Supreme Lord. Arjuna's acceptance of Krishna as the Supreme Pure complies with the injunctions of Vedic literature. This is also confirmed by great personalities of whom Narada is the chief. Krishna is the Supreme Person of Godhead, and one should always meditate upon Him and enjoy one's transcendental relationship with Him. He is the supreme existence. He is free from bodily needs, birth, and death. Not only does Arjuna confirm this, but all the Vedic literatures, the Puranas, and histories. In all Vedic literatures, Krishna is thus described. And the Supreme Lord Himself also says in the 4th chapter, "Although I am unborn, I appear on this earth to establish religious principles." He is the supreme origin. He has no cause, for He is the cause of all causes, and everything is emanating from Him. This perfect knowledge can be had by the grace of the Supreme Lord. Here, Arjuna expresses himself through the grace of Krishna. If we want to understand Bhagavad Gita, we should accept the statements in these two verses. This is called the paraṁ system, acceptance of the disciplic succession. Unless one is in the disciplic succession, he cannot understand Bhagavad Gita. It is not possible by so-called academic education. Unfortunately, those proud of their academic education, despite so much evidence in Vedic literature, stick to their obstinate conviction that Krishna is an ordinary man. Om Gana Tamaranda Shah Gana Gana Salakaya Chakshamali Tamyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitamyeni Bhutale Swami Rupa Karamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaisnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagvajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sabadvaitam, Sabadutam, Parijana, Sahitam, Krishna, Chaitanya, Devam, Shri Radha, Krishna, Paran, Sahagana, Lalita, Shri, Vishakam, Vitamscha, Ye, Krishna, Karuna Sindhu, Dina Bandhu, Jagat Pate, Gopesha, Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta, Namostute, Tapta Kanta, Nagorange, Radhe, Vrindavan, Eshwari, Vishabhanu, Sutadevi, Pranamami, Hari Priye, Vanta Kapias the Rubius Tra, Kripa Sindhu Beavacha, Patitanam, Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavyo, Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sri Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this chapter, let me get back to it, is entitled The Opulence of the Absolute. This computer doesn't want to work. So in this chapter, Arjuna is reaching a turning point in this instructions from Krishna on the battlefield at Kurukshetra. Because we know that Arjuna, he's in a crisis in his life. At this point, he's in a crisis. So in front of him, he's seeing all his relatives on the battlefield because he had asked Krishna to take him out there so he could see what was there. And then he became bewildered and he became confused. He was bewildered and he became confused. And he even put down his Gandiva bow, which he said he would never do. He said if anyone asked me to put down my Gandiva bow, that he would kill the person. But yet, he sat down in the chariot and decided, I can't do this. But, he's a Sattva. So his duty is, Arjuna, he's an excellent bowman. He's very famous for his skills. Everyone knows, but now he's reluctant to follow Krishna's instructions. He knows why he's there on the battlefield. So, yet he became bewildered and he confused, seeing all his relatives ready. They were all ready to go to war. So thus Krishna began to instruct him, to bring him out of his illusion. So I was listening to a lecture, and the person who was giving pointed out that in chapter 2:7, Arjuna supposedly surrenders to Krishna, saying, I'm confused, I'm bewildered, now I'm a soul surrendered unto you. But yet, in the next, I think it's the 9th verse of that same chapter, he makes the decision that I will not fight. And this was after he had surrendered and said, I'm taking you as my spiritual master. So he still had doubts. He had doubts. So Krishna starts trying to bring him out of his illusion. So we can understand too, if at least for me, when I first took initiation, I was still a little bit confused about the role of the spiritual master, even though I had taken initiation. So we all go through some doubts along the way, and if our spiritual master says he wants you to do something or go here, sometimes we're a little doubtful about whether we can follow that instruction or not. So Arjuna was in that place, you know. And he wanted to take Arjuna out of this lamentation and confusion about family affection, and wanted to give him enlightenment. So along the way, he cajoled him, he debated with him, he argued with him, he lovingly tried to instruct Arjuna, getting him out of the maze of confusion. So in this chapter, Krishna has brought him to point by point. In the present chapter, he brought him through all the discussions about the soul, about different types of yoga. He brought him all the way through to this point where Arjuna is finally admitting that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he surrenders to him. And it's not that Arjuna is doing this on a sentimental level. Because when he first surrendered, in chapter 2:7, when he first surrendered, it was a little bit of a sentiment that he would take Krishna as the spiritual master. But now, there's no sentiment. Actually, he, in that, this verse, all these sages are mentioned. And I looked up the sages, and I thought it was good that we know about each of these personalities. We know about Narada, but some of the others we may not know. So I just got a little bit of background on these sages, and I'll share them with you. So we know about Narada. A lot of times when we look at some of the films or videos about Narada, he seems to be portrayed as a little bit of a troublemaker. Sorry. He's a little bit of a troublemaker, but he's the chief sage among sages, and he's the son of Brahma, and he's a spiritual master of such great devotees, such as Dhruva Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Srila Vedavyas, Vyasadeva, and Valmiki. So he's not an instigator as depicted in some of the movies we see about him, but he's a great philosopher, and he expedites Krishna's pastimes. So whatever he's doing, whatever he's telling, he wants to expedite Krishna's pastimes to help them, to move them along, to please Krishna. And then the next person is Devala, and he is the elder son of Domya. And Domya is the priest of the Pandava family. And he met with Yudhishthira after the battle of Kurukshetra. And then Asito, he recited and explained to his father all the verses from the Mahabharata. And he was one of the members of the snake sacrifice. If you're familiar with Janamejaya, who wanted to kill all the snakes in the world because the bird had killed his father. So he did a sacrifice to kill all the snakes in the world. So Asito was present at that sacrifice. And then, of course, we know about Vyasadeva. He's the literary incarnation of the Lord Vishnu, and he's the author of the Vedas. So these great souls, they received the Lord's mercy, and so they understood the meaning of the Vedas. So when Arjuna is mentioning these personalities, it's not sentimental. It's actually the Vedic injunction as said in the purport. It's the Vedic injunction, so he wasn't being sentimental. It was backed up. And that's what we all have to do whenever we are giving class or instructing or talking with someone. We should always back it up with scripture. I've heard Srila Prabhupada in lectures say whenever we give, we should always back it up. Then it won't be our own opinion, because what is our own opinion worth anyway? So in the purport, Prabhupada says that one may think that Arjuna is flattering Krishna because Krishna is his intimate friend. But Arjuna cites the great historical authorities, the acharyas, who are pure devotees, who are free from lust, greed, and anger. And also, Krishna says in the śāśvataṁ, Canto 11, he also says that among sober men, I am devalo and asito. So this Vedic knowledge is received perfectly by the disciplic succession. And Arjuna, who is heard submissively, is now free from all doubts and has declared this about Krishna with conviction in his heart. I didn't realize, usually I print these out, but I didn't realize that every place was closed because of this holy going on. So I just want to read the slokas, previous slokas. And I'll start with 7, even though 7 isn't one of the Chatushlokis, but I'll read it. It says, because it says, one who is factually convinced, and it says factually, no, not whimsically. It says factually convinced of this opulence and mystic power of mind, engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this there is no doubt. So in 8, the text is, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. 9, the thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. And number 10, to those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. And then number 11, to them, I give special mercy, I dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining light lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So when we say the prayer, Om Gyanati Marandasha, we're saying that our spiritual master has been very merciful to us and brought us out of the darkness of ignorance. So some of the other commentaries that the quotes that I would like to read are from Baladev Vidyabhusana, and he's quoting from the Gopal Tapani Upanishad. One is, therefore, Krishna is the Lord beyond the material modes. One should meditate upon him, relish him. So we're spirit souls, and we're pleasure seekers by our nature as spirit souls. But it's said that we can get enjoyment from serving and worshiping Krishna. We can enjoy it. It says relish him. We relish Krishna. We serve him. We worship him. And another quote from the same Upanishad is, that which is called Tat Sat cannot be cut. It is fixed in form. And we know there are a lot of Mayavads and impersonals who think that Krishna doesn't have a form. But in the Vedic books, it says that he is fixed in form and is different from things which are born and deteriorate, like our bodies, the bodies that we're in. And in Bhagavad Gita 10:8, Krishna says, "Am sarvasya bhavān." I'm the source of everything. So we should understand Krishna like Arjuna is understood, and hear about Krishna from the pure devotees. Krishna is vibhum and we are ānu. Krishna is great and we are very small. So no one is higher than the Lord, and no one is his equal. He's a transcendental master and the supreme yogi. He is vibhum and we're ānu. And when we fully surrender to Krishna, I've had the experience that Krishna reciprocates. He reciprocates with our desire to serve him. He reciprocates when we surrender to him. He reciprocates in the big things and the little things. So we have everything to gain and nothing to lose by surrendering to the Lord completely. He has the plan for our life. So we should cultivate knowledge, just like Rukmini. The reason she wanted to marry Krishna was because she heard so much about him. And she became attracted. We're attached to so many things. We become attracted to so many things. But we should become attracted and attached to Krishna. And then we become totally convinced and determined. So that we make steady progress back home, back to Godhead in this process of Krishna consciousness. So I'll end it there. If anyone has any questions or comments or corrections, I'm open.
Thank you, Mataji. Just one question on this surrender you mentioned.
Yes.
Just perhaps, I've been hearing a lot about surrender recently. And if you could maybe just describe surrender in the actual process at the very moment of surrender. I mean, it's a constant endeavor, you know. Talk about it's a constant thing, every moment you have to surrender. But how to actually know, fair enough, someone gives you some instruction that seems very crazy, but still you know it's your authority, so you surrender to it. I can understand that, but oftentimes we don't have this clear, direct instruction, you know, so how to actually surrender in the moment, you know? Because it's a constant thing, but it doesn't seem like it's actually there, so if you can maybe explain.
You're saying that sometimes we are given an instruction and we don't want to surrender?
No, when we're given an instruction, I can understand how we need to surrender. This
Right.
makes sense.
Yes.
But oftentimes, if there's no direct instruction, then how do we actually surrender?
If you don't, you come closer so I can...
Forgive my accent. It's,
Yes.
I speak English, but in a funny way. I'm asking, in our everyday lives in Krishna consciousness, we wake up in the morning, okay, so we surrender, we go to Mangal Arati. Sometimes we want to go to bed, but we surrender.
Yes.
And this is fine, but just how to know throughout our day, how to constantly surrender.
Yes.
Like, in every little act, how to do it.
How to do it?
Yeah.
Chanting. How to come closer. Every day? Is that it? Well, if you're getting up at Mangal Arati, if you're chanting your rounds, if you're associating with devotees, if you're around the pure devotees, if you're going to Srimad Bhagavatam class, if you're hearing, even if you're not in the temple, if you're hearing, there's plenty of opportunity to hear. So hearing is one of the first that's listed for devotional service. That's surrendering. So if you're doing those, then that's surrender. And I agree with you that surrender is moment by moment, because I've also had the experience. You know, sometimes maybe you don't feel like chanting, but feelings come and go. So we just have the determination, whether I feel like it or not feel like it, doesn't have anything to do with it. That I made vows when I took initiation that I would chant. So in that way, we're also following the instructions of our spiritual master. So that's surrendering. Are you feeling that you're not surrendering?
Yeah, I just have this conception that surrender has to be something very difficult that I feel I cannot do. You know? Someone says, you know, go and distribute books for 10 hours. And it's like, no, I cannot do it, but I have to surrender. But if someone says, sit in the kirtan, well, maybe you really want to, you know? So it doesn't feel so much as surrender. But is surrender always, you know?
You're surrendered to your spiritual master's instructions?
I'm trying to be. Does surrender always have to be difficult?
No. Maybe someone else can add to that or has a comment about it.
I will make a comment.
Okay.
Surrender means is your father, you are obedient to your father.
Well, I don't think he wants him to be
No, you are obedient to your father and mother. Obedient. Yeah, obedience is a kind of surrender also. So if you are obedient to your spiritual master, if you follow all his instructions and do all the 9 devotional services, that amounts to surrender. It's as simple as that. What do you say?
But also, when we having problems surrendering, or if we have trouble with it, that's why we have a spiritual master. We go to him and tell him the problems we're having or the doubts that we have. You know, it's just like Arjuna in the beginning, he was saying, I'm surrendered to you, but actually he wasn't. He wasn't fully surrendered. Because in 7 he says, I accept you as my spiritual master, but then 9 he says, I'm not going to fight. Even though he had just said, you know. So the spiritual master is there, and so Krishna takes him just to convince him. The whole Bhagavad Gita is just to convince Arjuna to fight. So that's why you have a spiritual master, to answer your questions and your doubts, and also ask him about surrendering. What does it actually mean? Because also we're not supposed to follow blindly. We're not blind followers. Prabhupada said that all the time. But we can inquire. The spiritual master's service is to bring us through all the issues and problems and doubts that we have along the path. That's why we take a spiritual master, so he can help us, because we can't always, hardly ever, make the decision on our own, especially when we take a spiritual master. Then it becomes whimsical. We took a spiritual master so he can instruct us. We have to take shelter at his lotus feet. If we have a doubt, he's there to hear it. If we doubt that we're really surrendered, he's there to hear it. He wants to help. All these personalities, Narada and the persons mentioned, is their only aim is to help the living entity. So isn't the spiritual master too? He's there to help us. We have to see it like that and take shelter of him. and say, I'm having trouble, I don't know if I'm really surrendered, like that. No? Yes? Is that okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you for the nice class. Regarding this question of surrender,
Yes.
As my Guru Maharaj, or our Guru Maharaj would say, it's a big word. So it may not be able to be defined in one aspect or another. But one perspective which I might put forward is that
Please.
in 1866, Krishna says, abandon all varieties of religion and surrender unto me. So that's a personal thing. Krishna is saying, abandon the varieties of religion and surrender unto me.
Yes.
So it's a personal thing.
Right.
So it's a relationship thing also.
It's a relationship too. It
Yeah.
Also, I also had that problem because that was the very verse that gave me difficulty when I was coming to the process. Because I believed in God, but I thought if I surrendered, then I would be leaving God. Whatever concept I had, I also was dealing with that too, in terms of surrendering. It's a personal choice. But then it's a personal choice because, excuse me, also Arjuna, Krishna says to Arjuna, now I've told you everything. Make your own decision.
So then we could add faith as well.
Yes, yes.
It's very multifaceted.
Yes, it's multifaceted on all levels. Even our chanting has a lot to do with it. How are we chanting? Are we attentive chanting? Are we really connecting with Krishna? It's true, it's multifaceted. It requires a lot of discussion. And that's why I also said that, speaking with your spiritual master, he has the answers.
The English word surrender and the Sanskrit word sharanagati, they are not equivalent. Sharanagati means you are taking shelter, total shelter under his feet, and he is totally protecting you.
Yes.
Surrender is, sometimes to the enemy you surrender, and he can do anything for you. So the word surrender and sharanagati are not equivalent words. That's my feeling.
Okay. I think this Prabhu, he wanted to speak.
I think the point you were making is that surrender is gradual. It is not instantaneous. And Arjuna's first thing, I'm surrendered, but he wasn't fully.
Yes.
And doing all of following the instructions of the spiritual master, you can stop sometimes and think, am I surrendered? But you see, if you stopped and think, am I surrendered? You're not surrendered, because you're not following the spiritual master's instructions.
Yes.
So it becomes a game, a catch-up game. When you're chanting and you're not chanting perfectly, you're not fully surrendered. So the thing is patience. Just do it. Don't wonder whether you're doing it perfectly, because perfection is going to take a long time to come. And chanting perfectly, how many people can chant perfectly? They wouldn't be here if they chanted perfectly. So it is such a gradual, subtle progression. And at the very end, Krishna does say, surrender unto me, but make up your own mind. But at that stage, Arjuna has surrendered. And what follows in the battle, he doesn't think, am I going to shoot this way, or that man first? He just does it. And there is no question about being surrendered. That is 100%, where you don't question whether you are surrendered.
And we see that Krishna had to speak the whole Gita in order to convince Arjuna. He had to give them point by point by point, everything. He gave them everything. He told them everything. But still, he left it up to him. It's your choice. It's your choice. Because to actually love Krishna, to want to surrender to Krishna, we have to become attached to him and develop love for him. Someone else had this, Prabhu, you want the mic, please?
Thank you, Mataji. So nice, very good class. You have explained very well about surrender. I just want to know about asito, devala and asito. You have mentioned asito, rishi asito, and devala. Yeah. Can you tell a little bit more about those two rishis? Asita, who was Asita, and
those
devala?
were what I found was the only ones I wrote down. And also I found there was a little confusion because there was also a personality. His name was Asita Devala. The two names were together. So I'd have to do further search to find out.
By the way, what is their position? Who were they, Asita and Devala?
They were the sages that were the authority that Arjuna mentioned, that Prabhupada says in the verse. They were mentioned in the verse. It was Narada, it was Asita, it was Devala, and it was Vyāsaḥ. Okay.
So Asita, the position of Asita is equivalent to Narada or not?
I'm sorry?
Position of Asita and Devala is equivalent to Narada or not?
No, Narada is the son of Brahma. Huh? Yes, Narada. He's the chief among the sages.
Asita, what is the position?
He was the one that was Domya. He was son of Domya.
Rajguru of Pandavas.
Yes, he was, yes.
Yes. Asita.
Yes.
And then Devala was the person who was present during the Janamejaya after Parikshit Maharaj, when he wanted to, because his father was killed by this serpent snake.
Yes, after. Yes.
That time he wanted to take the revenge against all the snakes, and that time Devala was present. No. Devala is not son of Janamejaya. He was present at that time. Yes. He is one of the rishis.
At the time of war, he was there. Parikshit brought after the war. Naturally, his son was also born after the war. So, how at the time of Gita, before the war,
And this was after the war. After the war, but he was there even before that. Yeah, those rishis they have a long life, 1,000 years. Before as well. He was well known before as well. About his parents, we don't know. We have to make research.
Always living among the sages throughout their whole life. Asita, Devala, Vyāsaḥ. Yes. Not Parikshit's son. Devala is not Parikshit's son.
No.
Parikshit's son, Janmejaya, was performing a sacrifice in which he was invoking all the snakes to be burnt in the sacrifice. And Devala was present at that time. He was not son of Parikshit. Parikshit's son is Janmejaya, and Janmejaya's son is, I think, Vajranav. Yeah? Grandson. Yes. Oh, Krishna's grandson.